tiny Beastwoman nurse, told me to relax, then climbed all over me. Commander Sarah Chen had seen her share of alien medical facilities during her 15 years in the Galactic Defense Corps, but the Zalathi Treatment Center still caught her off guard. Everything was scaled for beings half her size. The doorways barely cleared her shoulders, and she had to duck to avoid the lighting fixtures that hung like crystalline wind chimes throughout the corridors. "Please follow," chirped the reception clerk, a diminutive creature with iridescent feathers and owl-like eyes. "Healer Crix will see you now." Sarah limped after the clerk, her left leg throbbing from the plasma burn she'd sustained during the evacuation of Colony 7. The wound had been hastily treated aboard her ship, but the Zalathi were renowned throughout the galaxy for their medical expertise, particularly when it came to nerve damage and tissue regeneration. The treatment room was a marvel of organic architecture, with walls that seemed to breathe and pulse with a soft golden light. Equipment she couldn't identify hummed quietly in alcoves, while holographic displays showed complex biological readouts in scripts she couldn't decipher. "Commander Chen?" The voice was barely above a whisper, yet crystal clear. Sarah looked down to see what could only be described as a tiny beast woman, no taller than her waist, with russet fur covering delicate humanoid features, pointed ears that twitched with every sound, and large amber eyes that seemed far too wise for such. A diminutive frame. She wore pristine medical robes that somehow managed to look both professional and ethereal. "That's me," Sarah said, attempting to lower herself onto what appeared to be an examination table. The surface immediately adjusted to her height and weight, conforming to support her injured leg. "I am Healer Crix," the tiny being said, her voice carrying the musical quality common to her species. "I have reviewed your medical files. Fascinating physiology, humans. So robust, yet so unnecessarily tense." She tilted her head, studying Sarah with those penetrating amber eyes. "You must relax completely for the treatment to be effective." Sarah tried to settle back, but years of military training made relaxation nearly impossible. Every muscle remained coiled, ready for action. "I'm relaxed," she lied. Crix's ears flattened against her skull, an expression Sarah had learned indicated skepticism among the Zalathi. "Your biorhythm suggests otherwise. Elevated heart rate, muscle tension at 40% above baseline, stress hormones flooding your system." She made a soft, clicking sound with her tongue. "This will not do." Before Sarah could respond, the healer had produced a small device that projected a ladder of light leading up to the examination table. With surprising agility, Crix climbed up and, without ceremony, stepped directly onto Sarah's chest. "What are you—" Sarah started to protest, but Crix's tiny hands pressed gently against her collarbone. "Shh. This is standard procedure for human patients. Your species responds well to pressure therapy, though you rarely realize it." Despite weighing no more than a house cat, Crix moved with practiced precision, her small feet finding pressure points along Sarah's shoulders and upper arms. Humans carry tension in the strangest places. As the tiny healer worked, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in months: actual relaxation. Crix's movements were purposeful and soothing, each step carefully calculated to release knots of stress Sarah didn't even know she'd been carrying. "Your species fascinates us," Crix murmured as she worked, now positioned near Sarah's shoulder. "So large, so strong, yet you damage yourselves with unnecessary worry. Other species flee from danger or accept it. Humans—" She made that clicking sound again. "Humans charge toward danger while simultaneously planning 17 different ways to survive it." Sarah found herself chuckling despite the surreal situation of having a tiny alien walking across her body. "That's actually pretty accurate." "Of course it is. We have treated many humans over the centuries." Crix paused in her work, crouching down to meet Sarah's eyes. "Do you know what we call your species in our medical texts?" "I'm afraid to ask." "The eternal warriors. Not because you fight constantly, but because you never stop fighting, even when the battle is won, even when you should rest, even against your own body's need for peace." As if to prove her point, Sarah realized she had been unconsciously flexing her uninjured leg, ready to spring into action despite lying on a medical table in the safest facility in the sector. Crix resumed her work, now focusing on the area around Sarah's injured leg. Her touch was impossibly gentle, yet precise, and Sarah could feel warmth spreading through the damaged tissue. "The plasma burn has disrupted your neural pathways," the healer explained. "But human nervous systems are remarkably adaptable, more so than any species we have encountered." "Adaptable how?" "Most species, when faced with such damage, would require extensive cybernetic replacement. But humans—" Crix's ears perked up with what Sarah had learned was the Zalathi equivalent of a smile. "Human bodies simply find another way. New pathways, new connections. It is quite extraordinary." The treatment continued for what felt like hours, though the chronometer suggested only 30 minutes had passed. Crix worked tirelessly, her small form moving across Sarah's body like a living acupuncture session. Gradually, the pain in Sarah's leg began to subside, replaced by a tingling sensation that spoke of healing. "There," Crix announced, finally, stepping down onto a hovering platform that had appeared beside the table. "The neural pathways are reconnected, though you must rest for the healing to complete properly." Sarah sat up slowly, amazed at the absence of pain. "That's incredible. I can't feel any—" "Ah." Crix held up one tiny finger. "That brings us to the difficult part. You must rest. Actually rest. No planning missions, no reviewing tactical reports, no light duty. Complete rest for 72 hours. Sarah's instinctive protest died in her throat as she met Crix's unwavering gaze. There was something about the tiny healer that commanded respect, an authority that had nothing to do with size and everything to do with absolute competence. "I understand this is challenging for your species," Crix continued, her voice gentle but firm. "But this is why the treatment succeeded. Your body knows how to heal, you simply must allow it to do so." As Sarah prepared to leave, Crix called out one final instruction. "Commander, remember what you learned today. Sometimes the greatest strength is in knowing when to stop fighting, even against yourself." Walking through the corridors with steady, pain-free steps, Sarah reflected on the tiny healer's words. Perhaps there was wisdom in the Zalathi approach. Sometimes the most human thing to do was simply to be still and let healing happen. Even for an eternal warrior, rest could be its own form of strength.